Like, what if I could make his face, like the expression read kind of like that fish. Like maybe when he's really lost in thought, figuring out the pieces, he's sort of in this like fish-like state, just kind of swimming around in his thoughts, looking at things, kind of like an anchovy in that picture. Yeah, so I've also pulled in some reference for shoes. Shoes is actually the things I hate drawing the most. Not exactly sure why. Maybe I feel like I can't really do much with them, so I sort of, which is not true. You could say a lot about a character with their shoes, but it's just I've never enjoyed drawing shoes, so I have a tendency of glossing over it. Yeah, okay, so now that I've got my rough drawing, now this is kind of the fun part, actually. I can worry more about making a prettier drawing. So on a separate layer, I start drawing my character. Now, I'm also, so here's a tip. You're not tracing at this point. You're always drawing, which by that, what I mean is that regardless whether you're roughing something out or you're doing more of a finished design, you're drawing, which means you're thinking. So I'm still refining that silhouette, not to make it clean and pretty, but just to get that design a little bit sharper. I'm just rather than making broad decisions, I'm making lots and lots of little decisions. So I'm trying to find this kind of swoopiness to his hair, but I'm struggling with losing his cranium. So it looks like he has no back of his head and just this spiky hair. Yeah, this stuff I find really hard. I could be stuck on something like this. Yeah, trying to figure out like what one perfect swoop I can do to get the look I want. It's tricky, especially since this is after you've drawn a character a bunch of times, let's say I put him in a story and I've drawn 20, 30 pages with them, I've started finding the character more and also like the shorthand from. In the beginning, right now, I've got him in this side view, which I kind of like, but I'm actually not sure whether I can draw him again from a different point of view, because who knows how that swoop looks like from behind or even from the front. Let me just take a sip of my coffee here. So back to the cuffs. So one of the things I liked was that other than the shape of the cuff, you can have this two-tone pattern for the part on the inside of the jacket. So that could be another way to separate his arms from his wrists, from his hands. And why do I always think that part is really, I think it's really important part of the character design, because your characters act so much with their hands. And if there's some way to have those, to have like their gestures read a little bit better, it just makes the storytelling and acting much easier when you're actually taking your character out for a test run by putting him into a story and having him run around, make jokes, jump from cars, whatever it is. One of my favorite artists, Mike Mignola, he is fantastic at, I'm sure you guys know he's fantastic at shapes. You can see Hellboy. There's so many shots of Hellboy in a sewer, and he's hunched over, and he's got maybe his like big gauntlet touching the side of the wall, and his other one hand is holding a gun. And there's no ambiguity about Hellboy's pose or the tension Hellboy might feel while he's like walking into darkness. But really, Mike Mignola often he's just drawn some fairly broad shapes. Sometimes he barely has any detail in there, but your brain, he uses shape language to such great effect that you know exactly what's going on, even though there's actually not that much there, but his shapes are so effective. Yeah, he's fantastic. Okay. Now this stuff, the buttons. So now I know I want a jean jacket. It's not a leather jacket. Now we can start putting in things. Now you can actually start drawing a jean jacket. Figure out where the seams are. What makes a jean jacket other than just the material? Like there's certain other things. I think they tend to have those big pockets. The ones that I'm looking at here have a certain type of collar. And then the seams are really important. Where the thread goes, the stitching. It's like there's this horizontal stitching above the pocket, and then there's of course the ones around the sleeves. One thing I'm thinking of with this character to distinguish him more, one thing to distinguish this character more, I think it could be his tie. I played around with the idea of putting a fish symbol on there. I haven't really found a way to do it that I like. Yeah. Actually, you know what? These shoes I'm kind of digging. Probably if I just like stopped complaining about drawing shoes and actually took the effort to learn more about shoes and looking up interesting references, I probably would also eventually enjoy drawing shoes. A lot of times I find that the things that we don't like to draw is simply just because we don't know how to draw them. Once you know how to draw something, then you can start having fun. You can start designing, actually. Once you figure out what makes a thing, you can go about breaking it. And that's the part that I find interesting. Like how much can I change this thing? How quirky can I get before it's not this thing anymore? Like what separates a shoe from just socks or a boot? You know, that kind of thing. And we have moved on to the jeans and then the hands. This part here, this part of the process, a lot of times there's actually not that much to talk about because it's just sort of all draftsmanship. Now, I'm saying like sort of a lot of things about design and maybe more conceptual stuff, but the most important thing, especially if you're starting out, is just having strong fundamentals. I've talked a lot about breaking things and making things interesting. You should do that once you feel you're at a certain level with drawing. There's a real danger of how can I put this? There's a real danger of maybe crippling your progress in art by pursuing a style too fervently. Like maybe you've stumbled on a way to draw faces. But it looks cool. It could be, I find that with art, with comics, cartoons, there's like always this like current flavor that's very trendy. Here's my Spotify. There's a real danger with trying to pursue a style too early when you're maybe just beginning in art, because you may stumble on a way you like to draw certain things, like maybe like drawing faces or hands a certain way, but maybe it's just because you don't know how to draw it the proper way. And in the beginning, that may be fine because there's art, like everything. There can be certain trends. The way you're drawing in a certain style may be very trendy at the moment, maybe really in demand, really popular and stuff. But things are cyclical, and what's hot at one moment may not be popular later on. And then you've now drawn, let's say, faces a certain way for the last 5-10 years, and you have a hard time not drawing that way. Because what you've really just figured out was a shortcut. You're not drawing a face, you're just drawing a symbol of a face. So it's always the most important thing I keep on thinking about is to have strong fundamentals. That will get you really far. You can be quite versatile. You can learn to do different things in different styles. And it also gives you more freedom just to be yourself too, oddly enough. Having strong fundamentals allows you to express yourself more freely rather than being limited by your skill set. So anyways, enough about that. So what am I doing here? I am making a lasso. I'm lassoing around this character so I can fill it with a color, because I'm going to start thinking about color palettes for this character. So what I do, you could do this any number of ways. You could take a brush with preferably no anti-aliasing and no opacity, and just color very carefully or not carefully, just like color it completely and then erase around the edges so you can get the silhouette. This way I found a little bit quicker, and the silhouette is solid because it's just one single fill. It takes a little bit longer to select around your character, but it's also kind of a good time. It's a nice mental break too, because you're not thinking. It's just sort of mindless work, which is nice. And boom, I filled it. I just chose a somewhat arbitrary color. I chose a color that I thought maybe what I want to work with. Now, some people just fill. So there's lots of ways to do this, and it really kind of depends on how you feel about color. I personally love color. I don't like working from grayscale and then overlay and then have a bunch of fancy Photoshop tricks and then oh, you got a cool gradient. I can't stand that. I want the colors that I put down. I want every single choice to be deliberate, whether they're good or not. I don't want the computer, I don't want Photoshop, I don't want Clip Studio making any decision for me. I will do some of those fancy effects at the end for some snazziness, and those are the things that people notice first, because oh man, look at that glow. But the stuff that it's kind of weird. The stuff that really impresses people is just so easy to do, but that only works if you kind of done the boring legwork yourself. So now as I've got my big silhouette of color in, I'm going in and choosing other parts, and I've chosen his hands. Now I'm choosing his face, and I'm also going to fill that in with the same color. And now I'm breaking things apart, and at this point it gets faster and faster because there's less and less to select. So you just saw right now that sometimes I choose a color and I fill it in, but also sometimes I want to think about colors in relation to each other. So I've chosen kind of a blue sort of scheme so far. You can now find You can choose other colors, maybe a little bit less arbitrarily. You can think like, okay, so this is his blue. Now I want his hair. Let's say do I want it brighter or do I want it darker? Do I want it more saturated or less saturated? Do I want it cooler or warmer? So you might not be thinking it's like, oh, I want a light blue jacket and then I want dark blue hair. You're just thinking, okay, what do I want? How do I want these colors to relate with each other? Because this is what I think. I think it doesn't really matter what colors you choose. A lot of it's arbitrarily. Like some people will like things more than others. You can show somebody this design and one he'll have a yellow jacket, one will be a yellow jacket, and you go, hey, which one do you guys like more? And then one person will choose one person will choose the other. But it's just all preference. There's no, why is that yellow jacket better than that blue one? It's just, you just like it more because that's your thing. So any color really works. It's really more the relations that are important. So for me, although that jean jacket is important, what I really want you to pay attention to is the character. So I chose a more saturated blue for his hair. So we spend more time up there. And for that tie, the other tie that pops, I chose that because I just wanted I don't know whether this exactly works, but I wanted, if you were to look at him, I want you to start at his head and stay in the center of him. And I thought choosing sort of a cool color for the head, having that contrast with that pinkish tie, having those kind of bounce back and forth, might keep your eyes a little closer. Now I've been accused of anything. It's been commented on both things where my colors are either too monotone or too desaturated, or they're too colorful. So I don't know. I've heard it from both ways. Like, oh, those colors are kind of crazy. And then also in other cases, I found like, oh, it's a kind of a monotone scheme you've chosen. So I don't know. I've kind of, it's colors out of everything seems like to be the most subjective. I think as long as you understand the relations and how color works, that's the most important thing. Yeah, so I decided to add a little lock there because just to add something to the top. Maybe change the silhouette a bit. I was a bit worried that he might look like he has a receding hairline with how I've drawn him. Here I go with the cuffs. I can change up the colors a little bit. I can get a little bit more and more subtle. Still trying to find the balance. Oh, here's one other thing too. So these colors that I've chosen for him they're just super broad. I'm still designing the character. This is a work in progress. This is not even going to be the finished version of the character. This is just, I'm seeing how far I can take this before I call it a day for today. And then I'll need to go back and do other variations and so on. So I just want to know whether he has a blue jacket or a yellow jacket. And whether it's that specific blue, it really depends on, what scene he's in, the time of day, what other colors are around him.